Women on a Green Mission. Follow along as two friends document their unfurling permaculture journeys.
Join our chats each week where we'll be sharing how we and others apply permaculture to our gardens and daily life.
We're no experts. We're at the start of our journey, fumbling our way to a greener life. We'd love your company along the way.
Hi,
Well, hello.
Jo.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So what's been happening for you this week?
I've been doing all my seedlings and it was so exciting. It was only, I don't know whether it's the hot weather or what, but it was like a day or two and I saw all these green little leaves pop up and they're all sprouting and you've had lots of rain, so they're really happy. And I sneaky went to the nursery and bought about 8 different things for our native hedge to start planting out. Some Hardenbergia for the front.
Did you just say that you sneaky, like you were sneaky and went and bought them?
Yeah. I didn't tell Oscar, like I just did it and didn't tell him where the money went. Yeah, like one of those. Like when you do online purchases and you don't tell your husband they're getting delivered. I did the same thing, but with physical plants that I had to physically bring back onto the property and try and hide from him and be like, oh, those plants, they've been there for ages. Like, what are you talking about?
They were there underneath that tree when we got here. Didn't you notice?
I just gaslight my husband.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so we got some Hardenbergia, the purple one. Not native, but I bought some jasmine to climb on the fence. And
I love the smell of jasmine.
Oh no, I bought a grevillea. I bought a knife leaf wattle. I bought some kind of gum. Can't remember the variety. It was like a dwarf one that I want to put on the fence line. And like a prostrating grevillea that would be like a ground cover. So yes, I sneaked them back onto the property and hid them behind the shed, and I'm caring for them until I can plant them because I just couldn't resist. They were just like there and I wanted them and I have no self-control, so I bought them.
They needed saving. You've seen those videos where it's like plant math, right? Like, yes. You know, like if it's discounted, then technically it's free. If you can make more than one plant from it by taking a cutting, then technically it's free. Like there's just, you know, it's just perception. It's all good.
Yeah. So I've been planting little seeds and watching them grow and sneaky buying plants to put in my hedge. And besides that, I've just literally been doing mulching and layering of seaweed and like whatever resources I can find.
I think I mentioned it on the
past. No, yeah, I was going to say, I think I mentioned in a past podcast that I'm struggling to find cow poo, but I've got rabbit poo now, which has been really good to get a hold of. And I kind of put the question out on our alumni page to ask people what I should do. Brett mentioned mushroom, like spent mushroom waste, mushroom compost.
Yeah.
It's brilliant stuff. Marketplace around where I am. Yeah, so I'm going to get a hold of that and just as much diversity in my greens and browns with my layering. So trying to get some grass clippings and some wood shavings to add and just all trying to, diversify my greens and browns as much as possible because I don't have that cow manure or chicken manure. But I'll use some rabbit manure and I'm going to get some mushroom waste for my garden. But that's about it. Besides that, lots and lots of digging of materials and piling things up. But I was super excited to get some seedlings in the ground. And when we were in Newcastle, I went and bought some garlic. So I'm hoping to get that in the ground this week. A bit late, but I'm going to give it a red hot go.
You know what? I've planted it early. I've planted it late. You'll get something. It might not be the absolute, best that you'll ever get, but you'll get something out of it, and something's better than nothing.
And it might be a blessing in disguise that I've done it late because we copped like 2-3 weeks of rain. So I wonder if I planted it earlier, whether they just kind of would have rotted anyway. So I'm hoping it's kind of, blessing in disguise.
Or they would have... maybe been weakened. We had a year that we had a huge amount of rain, and even though they were still growing, they were weakened to the point where aphids were attacking garlic. Like, normally you don't get aphids on your onion family, but we just could not deal with them at all. Like they they basically just annihilated it. So just because, we had that much rain, the bulbs were just so weak. So yeah, it probably is a blessing in disguise.
So that's what we've been up to. What about you?
Nice. Well, speaking of bulbs, I planted 50 daffodil bulbs today. Yeah. So I actually saw a Jeff Lawton video where he talked about his fruit trees. So his ducks free range around the orchard, and he'd had comfrey and some other supporting plants for the fruit tree guild. But of course, ducks love eating that. And he said they just, even though comfrey was huge and it was really hardy, they just annihilated it. So he sort of thought about, okay, well, what could I put in there? And then he decided on daffodils because, well, A, the ducks aren't going to eat them. And B, you plant them out in this time of year in autumn. And then come spring, you get this beautiful absolute show of amazing daffodil flowers. And then at the end, they all start to die back. And, anyone who's grown any sort of bulbs before knows that you don't chop them off because you want to let them die back and the energy to go back down into them. So what happens is right before summer, or just as it starts to get really hot, you end up with this beautiful mat that lays down and creates a living mulch, or a lay down mulch, I suppose you could call it, around your fruit trees. So I looked at that and went, oh, that's perfect. And so we found some bulbs that were on sale. And of course, they're on sale. I can't say no. And when I bought them, Anthony said to me, now we've got a lot of projects on. Like, do you really think you're going to get these in before winter? Like, do you really think you're going to get them in over the next 3 weeks? Yeah, basically that's what I said. Yeah, hold my beer. Like, challenge accepted. So yeah, we just spent this morning actually whippersnippering the and for anyone that's listening that isn't in Australia, a whippersnipper is like a weed whacker. So we've got a little battery operated one that isn't too heavy duty. Brush cutter, yeah. So we use that around the fruit trees, and I'm the only one that's allowed to do that because anyone goes near my fruit trees with that it's certain death, because I don't want them rebarked. So I'm the only one that's allowed to do that. So I got on to doing that this morning, and really smart, made sure that I had my PPE, I had my boots on so that my little toes were safe. But then I decided it's a beautiful sunny day. Let's get some short shorts on. Let's get the legs out and see the sun. And of course, there was still some wood chip mulch there, right? So my poor legs got chewed up flinging wood chip. But it doesn't matter. It's all in, all in the process of doing it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what that's going to look like. So most of them have got anywhere between sort of 4 to 6 bulbs planted around the base of the fruit tree. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Oh, you'll have to put some photos up. I can't wait to see that.
I will. I'm just going to be like out there every day now going, have you come up yet? Have you come up yet? It's like, it's not even winter. They only come up in spring, but I'll still be out there going, are you there? Are you there? Hello. So who have we got today, Elise? I'm a little bit, I'm excited. You're fangirling.
Oh my God. We have Huw Richards. I was like so stoked that we Instagram messaged him and he was like, oh yeah, I'll come on the show. It was also casual and I just could not believe that he said yes. I love him. I love him to bits. He's like, don't tell him this, and hopefully he doesn't listen to this intro, but he's like, if you knock on the door, I'm going with Huw Richards. See you later, Oscar, kind of thing. Yeah. And Oscar's like, thank God he doesn't live in Australia. Like, I'd be done for. And he's probably a bit young for me, but anyway.
He's your celebrity hall pass. I love that.
Oh, funny. But anyway, we spoke to Huw Richards on the podcast, and he is a legend. Like,
he is, isn't he?
Yeah, so insightful. He's been doing this for such a young age. He's just so cluey in the way his brain thinks about things, and I just love how logical he is and how no nonsense, no bullshit he is. I think it's awesome. We need more of that. It's so refreshing.
And I love, and you can hear when you're talking to him. I mean, you can hear if you've ever watched any of his videos or, read any of his content, it's really obvious, but he doesn't see things as problems. They're just, oh, that's an opportunity. What can I do here? What would happen if? How far can I take this? And yeah, it's really good. But yeah, we had fun after we got over ourselves from fangirling. We had a ton of fun chatting to Huw. So without further ado, let's jump in.
But wait, before we talk to Huw, we need to remind everybody of something that's coming up.
Of course. Oh my God.
Yes.
I can't believe I almost forgot.
Joe and I will be going to the Northern Beaches for Permaculture Week, Permaculture Day. I don't even know what it is. We should know what it is since we're talking at this event. But anyway,
You should,
we're going to talk at a nursery in the Northern Beaches about the podcast and about how we do permaculture and answer questions and just to mingle and chat to people. So we'll put all the event details in the show notes about where it is, what's going on. We'd love for you to join us. When is it, Joe?
5th of May.
5th of May. So we'll be there in Sydney on the 5th of May, and we'd love for you to come and join us.
It'll be so much fun. And I'm pretty sure you and I are going to have a girls' night.
Yes.
We're having a girls' night.
We're not the only speakers there. There's a couple other speakers. So if you don't want to come listen to us, just come and listen to the other people. And apparently
just block your ears while we talk. Just, shove some bulbs in there. It'll be fine.
Well, it's a nursery. Go shopping. Go look for plants.
Exactly.
And I think there's food there and there's like music and it's like a whole thing. So we're very excited to be a part of it and to be invited to go along.
Wonderful. We'll put the details in the show notes and also on the Facebook group. But yes, let's try that again. Let's jump in.
Let's talk to Huw. Bye. Hey everyone, welcome to another week. We are here recording with Huw Richards,
which is very exciting. Welcome, Huw.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good.
Oh, we're amazing. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on the pod with us and have a bit of a natter with us.
You're very welcome. Just as a forewarning, my dog is not used to being locked outside, as in not allowed in here. So if you do hear the odd bark or something, that's what she is doing.
Okay, Joe's got turkey.
No,
and her sons are outside really? On their car. So
often in the podcast, turkey noises in the background because they want to come in as well.
I mean, everyone just wants to join the fun, don't they?
They really do.
So I don't know about what your situation is there, but in Australia we acknowledge our traditional custodians of the land. So the land that we're recording on currently is Wanneroo country.
Wanneroo country, that's right, in the Hunter Valley in New South Wales.
Do you have anything like that in Wales?
No. Well, it's it's just like Celts, isn't it? So, but we don't have that kind of. I mean, I'm in Wales, so all of the town and village and names are the original Welsh names, and so it's not like it's changed or anything. So where I live is Aberystwyth, which means mouth of the river Ystwyth, and my county is Ceredigion. Where I grew up was a little community or like hamlet called Llwynpiod, which means magpie's bush. So it's all just kind of nothing really has changed. It's just kind of stayed the same. Yeah.
There's something comforting about that, though, isn't there?
Yeah, because it's like I guess I live guilt-free. I think there's a lot of guilt in this world, and I just don't understand why people should feel guilty for being born and existing. I don't understand why people are so obsessed with having to take responsibility or feel like they have to take responsibility for things that other people have done 200 years ago, which has nothing to do with them in the first place. I think it's really important to be completely respectful of cultures, but I think the situation here in the UK is kind of different, and it's kind of nice because we've still retained the Celtic culture. We've still got, we've got Ireland, we've got Scotland, we've got Wales. They're those. Then you could argue that maybe Cornwall, and then you could argue that at one point the rest of the England was Celtic as well. But I think that from what I've seen, there's a lot less. I know the reason why, but there's a lot less contention about it here.
Yeah. And I think we're going through that, which I think will be a very long process, that adjustment period where things go, when anything's adjusting, it goes all the way over to one side before it sort of comes back and finds that equilibrium. I love the fact that you addressed that about the guilt, because it is something for us. We acknowledge the lands that we're on, and we're incredibly respectful, around the First Nations people in this area that owned the land. Like, we are just land stewards, but to carry that guilt for things that have been done in the past by others, that doesn't help anyone. There's no moving forward.
No, it doesn't set someone up on a good, a nice welcome to the world, I think. I also think that there's very much a case of, I think actions are so much more important than just saying stuff. I think everyone is so happy with just kind of, joining trends. It's cool to support this trend. I'm not actually going to do anything but turn my profile picture a different color, and that's it.
What are you telling us? Could argue do anything, Huw? Is that I'm really disappointed.
You could argue that it's like raising awareness, and like, I get that, but it's like, no, it's like what you do in your day to day matters. And for me, I'm really interested in practical, in logic, in rationale. And so for me, it doesn't make any logic to just virtue signal all the time. For me, it makes sense to just do the actions and to help and to be present and to have open conversations and to just live. I think everyone just gets sucked up in this whole like internet thing, and it's just it's kind of when you enter the real world, you realize, okay, actually, maybe it isn't quite as shit as it first seemed.
Yeah. Speaking of getting sucked into the internet world, you've been gardening and YouTubing for a very long time. When did you first kind of get introduced to permaculture? Was it a slow burn? Did it hit you on the head one day? Did you read it in a book?
Well, it's so funny because as I sat down, I realized that I had it here on the table. But it was the Permaculture magazine that got me hooked when I must have been maybe like 10 or 11 years old. And we were on a camping trip, and there's this community kind of kitchen, living room part of the campsite. And on the wall, there's a load of magazines. And then I saw permaculture. And I was like, what's this? And then I just spent the rest of the camping trip reading the magazine. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then obviously, as soon as I got home, I was like starting to look up things, and then a couple of years later, I discovered people like Jeff Lawton, and I was like looking at all of Bill Mollison, David Holmgren, here in the UK, Patrick Whitefield. So there's all of these kind of initial icons that I was kind of looking into, and I think I know I was complaining about the internet, but we have to realize the internet is a tool. There's good and bad things. I try and use it just for the good. It's just like saying there's a car, a car can get you from A to B, or it can run down a crowd of children. It's so for me, my job is to try and inspire, help as many people as possible using the tool of the internet. And what I am grateful for is that I'm very much self-taught. I am not an expert. I've done my permaculture design course, but I haven't got around. I'll do my diploma one day, but I haven't got around to that. I've just been, too busy, living and trying things out and having fun.
Putting it into practice, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of. I don't know whether you see it about you, but people like to collect. It's like stamp collecting, but they like to collect certificates and accolades and.
We've had that conversation a few times. Yep.
Yeah, and then they get thrown out into the real world and like, oh, so that's how a tomato grows.
Yeah. And are you missing being at your dad's garden at all? Yeah, you've kind of transitioned out of
that. Nope, not one bit. Would you like to speak to that a little bit, or do we move on?
No, it's just because I quite like transition. I quite like change. I'm moving house. I'm downsizing. I'm in this kind of terrace house, half a minute walk away from the sea. I'm moving like 5 doors down into this, like, it's fully furnished, just renting, furnished 1-bedroom, like little apartment that is just nice, but it's just like simplifying and downsizing, and I can't wait for that. And I'm not going to miss this place one bit, and that's fine. I think for the case of my dad's garden or my parents' small holding, is that's almost reversed because I'm upscaling. Mm-hmm. I've gone from the kitchen garden, and now I'm going on to this 7-acre fields that I can have a lot of fun with. And so I'm not really there. Like, of course, I have fond memories of the garden, and it created me. But do I miss it? No, I have to drive half an hour to get there. I could just, in 10 minutes, I'm at the new site. So it's not, and it means I can just be there every day. I really struggled last year trying to juggle 2 different sites. So it was definitely the right decision you gotta let go. So.
Just let it, la 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 la. And that's the thing, though. It's having those memories, isn't it? And you can look back and say, what an achievement. That was absolutely amazing. Everything that we got from that, and we learned from that. And it's time. Nothing stays the same. We're either growing or we're declining. And, you got to just
everything.
Keep growing.
And unless you put attention to it, everything just is in a constant state of entropy. So I really like the idea of being able to actually give life and revitalize and regenerate things instead, and to reverse that decline towards a state of like death or chaos. So that's why I really like working with the land, because it's tactile and I can visually see the changes, and I like to visit other places where I can just recognize the amazing work that they've done. And I'm so grateful to my parents for essentially, excuse the pun, but sowing the seed for me to enter this line of work. And now, I'm feeling. I mean, it's the start of my growing season, so it's a very exciting time.
Yeah. And you've got lots of perennial stuff happening, and you're doing linear food forests. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so one thing that people in the UK forget is that they don't have a climate like that in Australia, where a lot of the original kind of collations of permaculture comes from. Obviously, all of those come from many different sources, a lot of different indigenous land practices, and it's kind of, I think people overcomplicate what permaculture is. I would say this is just a feeling, but I do think food forests are over-romanticized. Mm-hmm. I think that people who haven't tried it see it as, oh, wow, this is amazing. We can just grow 1 million different plants in one place. It all looks after itself, and it's going to feed the world. I'm like, like, show me the infrastructure. Like, you're living in a different universe if you think that kind of food system is going to feed the world. I think it's a simple reframing. Is just, this is how it made me maybe a little less critical of it in my head. Is to think of it as a forage forest instead of a food forest. So it's always like there's something available. It's always exciting, but its primary aim isn't to generate lots of food. That's what my kitchen garden is. Now, the linear food forest, which I first came across at James Reed's place, Tappernoth Farm, Tappernoth Permaculture up in Scotland. That was where I was like, okay, this is where we can start to look at more, sorry about the words, more of a commercialization of the idea of food forests, where the management and the productivity is increased. The management is made easier and the productivity is increased, because one thing that we lack here is sunlight and warmth, and we also have a really, really kind of short growing season. So mine, I have at least 5 frost-free months a year. So everyone now the next big thing is really annoying me, but everyone's like, oh, let's do syntropic.
Yeah.
And they're watching all these amazing videos of like tropical climates
with gum trees,
where things just keep growing like 365 days a year, and they're like, okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to plant some beetroot, I'm going to stick a willow in the ground, and I'm like, no. So it's hard because I did deflate a friend of mine quite a bit. We had like a half-hour discussion about it. So he was sharing his ideas, and I was sharing like the reality of nature. But it's hard because this is something that I struggle with, because I love it when people are so enthusiastic, and it's so important to have enthusiasm and hope. And so I was. He's the kind of guy though that, like, you know, he can say whatever and he'll brush it off. But it got me thinking, like, what would be the best way for me to help when I come across someone who's seen this and gets really excited, to help kind of steer them in either reality or a hybrid method. Because what will happen if I don't do anything, 9 times out of 10 they'll try it, realize it is either a lot more work than it takes, or it isn't, as, you know, the romance is dead. And then they're never going to grow anything for the rest of their lives. So it's a tricky balance. But it's I guess something that I'm kind of keen on is like having the discussion there and then, and taking that excitement. I don't know whether it's the same with you guys when you're speaking to other people, but have that discussion and then kind of reframe it slightly, and it can still be positive, still be exciting, but most importantly, they're far more likely to get a good result.
Yeah. I am like a neat, tidy kind of person. Like food forests do my head in, just because it's just too much and there's all this stuff, and I like the idea of lines and the aesthetics of a garden, and I struggle with food forests, like just the whole concept of them.
See, I was one of those ones that totally romanced it in the early days, and I'm like, I'm just going to grow everything, and I'm going to have this Garden of Eden kind of setup where, you know, I'm going to have the most amazing fruit and everything's going to be untouched. And then I realized very early on, what I'm doing is feeding wildlife, and if I get one piece of fruit, I'm still going to have to wrestle for that. And I'm going to have to do a lot of work for that. And I don't mind sharing. I'm all down for sharing, but I would still like some.
Yeah. Well, it's like if I try and grow red currants or strawberries and not undercover, no matter how diverse it is, a blackbird is going to be very happy and find it and eat it.
Yep.
And so so it's kind of thinking about what color fruit can I grow that means that things aren't going to eat it. So like green gooseberries seem to work well for me, or black currants or white currants. And the only red soft fruit that I can grow that seems to not be of interest to the birds, and this is in 2 sites now, is autumn raspberries. So I've been planting lots more of those because I'm like, finally.
We've got
but blueberries.
We've got a massive fruit bat colony that live right, like, in the next
suburb.
In McLean, and oh my god, I mean, we're a bit biased. Culture teacher did like netted espalier system, so like we're really into that because that's kind of what we were taught, and he integrates the systems below them and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to net and espalier all our fruit and nut trees because I just don't want to hassle with the fruit bats.
Yeah, I was going to say, with fruit bats, you're going to have no chance if you don't exclude.
Yeah, talk to me about like nuts. Are they kind of, do they grow well with you, and do you have any pest issues?
My region in particular, macadamias are really big in the Northern Rivers where I am, and right up the coast of Australia into Bundaberg, like quite high up the coast. I don't know about pests. So we've been traveling for 2 years in a caravan with our kids around Australia. So I haven't been gardening in my climate at all yet. So we've got kangaroos, gum trees, and grass, and we're living in our caravan. So we're just at the beginning stages of everything at the moment and starting all over again.
That's very exciting.
Yeah. So I'm just doing very heavy clay soil. So I'm doing lots of beach trips to collect seaweed and just mounding all our garden beds and trying to build everything up because we're coming into winter. So I'll be planting certain things. But yeah, just prepping everything for our spring beds at the moment.
Yeah, that's very cool. My issue here is that we have grey squirrels which love nuts, and as in my climate, there's not really many nuts that grow well apart from hazelnuts or cob nuts. And this is another thing where people are like, oh, I can just plant a forest of hazelnut trees. And the annoying thing about grey squirrels is that the day that you realize, oh, these will be ready in about a week from now to harvest, the very next morning, the squirrels will have stripped the whole tree, or even like the whole forest, bare. And but it does make the squirrel taste much nicer.
real nutty flavour.
Earthy tones.
Yeah, it's like turn the problem into the solution.
Yeah,
it's a high fat, high calorific content. So,
I love it.
But yeah, it's it's another thing. It's when it works, it's fine. But it's just kind of looking at patterns in nature. We have a lot of hazel that grows in the hedgerows, and I can only think of 2 years in my whole life where I've ever come across an opportunity to actually pick a basket full of hazelnuts that haven't been eaten. Wow. And I think that is kind of testament to the challenge presented. It's kind of useful to look at those little cues to think, okay, this is maybe what I would be in for if I wanted to expand it. It might be more deflation. At least with hazel, you've got, it's stacking functions. You've got multiple ways that you can use it, like building material or trellises, coppicing, bramble, chip wood. That's fine. So I think for a lot of things, if there's certain challenges, to also consider all of the other benefits that it offers or the other characteristics it offers. And then it could be a case of, again, it's a reframe. Okay, I can have a coppice system. I don't need to buy bamboo. I can create all of my own trellising for the garden by growing hazelnuts. But if I am lucky, I might also get a hazelnut crop. Then that slight change will suddenly kind of really would turn one disaster, because people love to focus on it's like tunnel vision, and I get it. It's like such a disappointment, and they don't see like the breadth. But it's like, permaculture is about the whole system and everything that goes into it. So, and it's trying to always remember to have a slight step back, to sometimes detach yourself from the very present in front of you and to see how it interacts with the rest of the site.
Yeah, and that's it. And how can you actually fit into that system? Because that, essentially the plants were here before us, the animals were here before us. We've come into that system essentially. Sure, we cultivate that system and we design things around it, but for all intents and purposes, nature was here before, the human in this form came into that system.
Yes, but we were here before carrots, weren't we? We were here before peas, because we've bred and a lot of the things that we eat now from what were just weeds, and so it took humans to create that. So it's kind of, you had the plants before us, then you had us, and now we create so it's
so we've created just the kind juicier, of a little tastier plant that nature now wants a little bit more of.
Yeah, basically. But I think it's important to not to, because in this kind of narrative where it's like the plants and animals came first, then we came. It feels like we're disconnected from nature, but we all come from nature, and part of like so many animals will alter the environment that they live in order to thrive. Like a beaver would cut down some trees and create a dam. Like humans just do that on a much larger scale, like with the hunter-gatherers, but looking at certain grasses and choosing ones of the biggest seed grains and then continuing to grow those. It's just nature's way of altering and adjusting for better survival, really.
Yeah.
Let's talk about self-sufficient garden, because that's like your newest, biggest project. What was the inspiration behind it?
Newest, biggest, littlest project.
What was the inspiration behind it and some of the considerations that went into planning it?
Yeah. So the Self-Sufficiency Garden is a project that I did with my colleague, friend and chef, Sam Cooper. It was almost, I think for me, the main response was the cost of living crisis. And also the idea that if you want to grow any kind of food that makes a difference, you need a whole farm. And I was like, no, this can't be right. But the thing that's funny, I will keep this quite brief because I have spoken about this a lot in the last 2 months. So hopefully I could just condense it to some of the key points. One of those being, I had never set out on a project where I was measuring yields. So I didn't actually know what kind of quantity of foods I could just go like, oh yeah, decent amount, but decent amount, what does that mean?
So like false doubting that like measures everything.
Yeah, I know.
He loves his stats.
Anyway, so I wanted to measure all of the yield of what I was growing. And the goal was to grow 365 kilos on a site which is half the size of a tennis court, and that's within the white lines. So that was the initial goal. I think my publishers thought I was bonkers. I thought I was bonkers, but Sam had faith in me, and I'm very grateful for that. And then we ended up growing just under 600 kilos, and along the way measuring every single harvest and suddenly getting a real idea of just how much we could produce. And it translates to 5 portions of veg every single day of the year for 4 people. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah. Did working with Sam...
I didn't plant any hazelnuts.
There were no hazelnuts in that mix.
Did working with Sam on the book and the Self-Sufficiency Garden change what you wanted to plant or how you thought about planting things because he is a chef and like he brought that aspect to it, or not particularly?
No, not at all. No,
don't
never.
give him that much credit.
No, and I'll tell you why, and it's really important. The thing that Sam and I connected on was food, but was also the high kind of almost our opinion of the fact that we don't understand why gardening and cooking is quite disjointed, or farming and the culinary world is quite disjointed. So what we say is cooking starts when you sow a seed and gardening finishes when the food is in your belly. And so what Sam, and this is also inspired by Dan Barber, who's a really interesting chef, and he has a farm, Blue Hill Farms. There's a documentary about it on Chef's Table on Netflix. But Dan Barber said it was along the lines of like forage first, create later. So you look at what's available, you take that, and then you create a meal out of it. So the idea is that you're eating what the land provides you. So the kitchen acts in service to the garden in the case of this project. So Sam was like, grow me what is most suitable, that just, basically he just wanted a diversity of flavors, but he's like, grow me what is most suitable for the land, and the seasons, and that was it. And then I got to decide, and then he was like, oh great, so we've got this coming up next month, so I can think about what to do with that. And I think that's quite nice. The most underrated skill for self-sufficiency for the vast majority of people is knowing how to maybe creative is a good word, but knowing how to be adaptable or flexible in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So the vast majority of what I cook, I don't follow recipes, because I'm just like, okay, this and this go together, and I can add a bit of spice or whatever, but it's just looking at what I have, make a meal, sorted.
Yeah.
Done.
Did you do like a lot of pickling and preserving and those kinds of things? Because obviously you can't grow it all year round like we do here.
Well, we can, because we have cold weather, but we don't have deep freezes and really, really like long periods of snow. So I can harvest from the garden 365 days a year, because I'm growing hardy crops. Like leeks survive down to minus 15 degrees Celsius. So I can just go in the garden, pick out a leek, and I have a bit of undercover growing, so I create these little hoop tunnels or hoop beds. So I've been picking fresh carrots all through winter. I've still got them now, and then beetroot and cabbages and parsnips and swede. And so the way that I kind of designed the garden, because I'm trying to think as well about, and it's so important, but it's looking at what is the make or break of this garden, and it's my time. But my time is quite limiting, because this whole project was done whilst I was doing basically everything else, more than a full-time job. And so I was like, for like thinking about a family, they don't want to be spending all of summer trying to preserve everything for winter. And so what it is, it's about balance, and it's actually dedicating a greater proportion of the growing area to growing winter vegetables. So instead of spending all of that time harvesting and preserving gluts, you balance out the harvest period to 12 months a year. So there's always something going. And of course, there's always going to be things that you can preserve, harvest, ferment. But it's more about creating that balanced attitude where suddenly it liberates you a lot of time and effort.
So the book would be applicable for Australia and other countries, not just your kind of climate then?
Well, it's a good question, because I get a lot of Australians asking me this. And the thing is that honestly, I don't know, because I haven't had the experience in Australia to know what happens when you, say, sow leeks in mid-spring, like mid-springtime, and then how they will fare. Because I don't know the growth habits of these vegetables in a frost-free zone, because mine is so bookended from mid-May, as in mid-May is my kind of late spring, to mid-October, which is kind of mid-autumn. That is where everything kind of really has to fit in. But the good thing about what I know is that there's a lot of crops that are frost hardy, or frost hardy down to a certain degree, so it starts to extend it, or growing under one layer of protection adds 4 to 6 weeks of growing season at either end of the seasons. Plus, it creates a more ambient over winter, which is why I could harvest carrots all through winter that were sown in late summer. So it's having to adapt it. I would say that looking at like watching videos from Self-Sufficient Me and other people. As I think a lot of it would work. I'm just not confident to say that if you followed it, it would all work. If you get me, because I just don't have the.
Well, I've got a vacant block of land. How about I do it to a T, and then you and Sam can come over, have like a, all expenses paid on your business card trip to Australia with a reason to write it up for tax purposes.
But you'll need to be here for a whole year, right? Because you've got to see what happens throughout the whole growing season. So
I think to be honest with you, I think the first 4, 5, maybe 6 months, I'm quite confident would work.
Yeah.
Following the plan, it's more like how things would work than when my autumn or winter hits. Mm-hmm. I would want to see what happens to those plants in the equivalent time span.
Yeah.
So if that helps, all of the first part would work quite well. And for those that are listening in say even colder climates than mine, the majority of it will work down to zone 5, and the frost dates match. My frost dates match kind of like zone 5B with the mid-May to mid-October. It's just the only difference there is that you will need to provide extra protection for your winter vegetables. So there's a lot of simple adaptations that can be done.
Yeah, I love the hotbeds that you do, but I just keep thinking my plants will cook in that surely during my winter.
Yeah, you won't need to actually cook in the kitchen. They're just all pre-cooked. Like your leek, it's not frozen. If it's at -15,
You're onto something there. Yeah, I think. I mean, maybe that could be a really funny April Fool's. It should be an April Fool's video.
And so talking about compost, that's what I'm working on at the moment, because we need to produce large amounts of soil compost because our soil is terrible.
Mm-hmm. We're in the same boat.
Yeah, and your latest video is all about that. So you genuinely reckon in a small kind of setting you can still make enough compost for what you need and your whole garden?
Yeah, for a small garden, the only way you can do that properly is you will need to bring in some external resources. But it's completely possible to make more than enough. I would say for the footprint of the self-sufficiency garden, maybe this year it's going to be around 5% of the footprint is making all of the fertility for the rest of the site. I do think that making your own compost is just one of the best things that you can do in terms of resilience. And like you, I can go and get seaweed from the local beaches here, and that's really fun. But in terms of the biggest site that I'm at, I'm trying to get it to a point where if suddenly I didn't have access to all of these external resources, that I'd still be able to have all of the fertility within that site. And I suddenly realized when I was looking at the plans and all of the plantings that I've been doing, that's a lot closer than I first thought. I thought maybe it'd be like 5 years or something. But I honestly think next year it could easily, if needed, it would almost be like a transition year, but it would mainly be because of the help of the chickens, and I would do a lot of hot composting as well. But I do think next year, if I was cut off to all external sources, it would be all right. But in 3 years, it would be like, oh yeah, easy.
Yeah, and how young or old is that garden space now?
We're entering its 3rd year.
Really, in the grand scheme of things, that's not terribly old. That's still a relatively young garden.
Yeah, and I would say that I think for a bigger site, in 3 years, if it was done well, it could enter a state of being able to be completely resilient in terms of, or self-sufficient in fertility. It's just this site for the first 2 years, I was between the two areas, and it was starting to establish this, but I had the other garden. But now having everything in one place, and all of the planting that we've been doing over winter, and all of the things that are happening, it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is it's quite simple, because if people get so caught up in soil health and soil fertility, and then people start doing these, like Dr. Laningham's soil health microscopy kind of biology courses, and they're fantastic. It's like, if you want to geek out about it, that's great. But for the vast majority of gardeners, the only thing you need to know about soil health is how to just create the right environment to let soil health, or let soil do its thing. You don't need to know about nematodes or the countless nutrients that exist. It's just about, how do you facilitate the right environment to just let soil health do its thing. It's kind of almost adding a bit of mystique and magic, but having faith in the process of nature.
We were joking the other day, I need a crazy seaweed lady shirt, because I rock up at the beach with a trailer and just pile the seaweed into the trailer, and I get stopped so many times. People are like, what are you doing? Like,
where
why
are you taking that?
this seaweed?
Yeah.
But to be fair, you have a significant amount of seaweed up where you live.
Oh yeah, it's like a problem. Like the wind just catches it on this particular beach, and we've got an acre and a half of hedges and brand new land that we're trying to kind of get to a point where we can plant things. So we need a lot of seaweed.
It's fun. Part of it as well is with reducing the dependency on finished compost, which really I only need for growing annual plants. All of the perennials, I can mulch either with fresh plant matter or just even partly decomposed stuff. So I'm looking at how I can grow as much biomass as possible, that I can just create piles of material that I could just, if I wanted to, leave for a couple of years and then take from that. So yeah, it's fun. For me, it's very creative. It's always thinking outside the box. It's always exploring every potential option in my brain, and then sleeping on it, and then the next day seeing which one has like stuck in there. And I'm not taking I'm not taking this site too seriously. It's meant to be fun. It's for me. Otherwise, what's the point? And so it's quite nice to have that freedom. And sometimes people are like, oh, why is he doing that? So I don't agree with that. It's like, yeah, I don't agree with it either, but I want to try it out.
Let's give it a go and see what happens. I think people can get really caught up in, and I've been guilty of it myself before. You get so serious about something, or so bogged down in a particular thing that we should, it's always fun when someone shoulds on you, how it should be done. And I love one of your videos where you were talking about no dig and why people get so, bent out of shape by, it's if you turn any part of the soil over, then it's not no dig, because, you've got to be a purist. And it's like, well, that's just not the reality of it. I really like that. And I love the way that you explained your position on that, and you're very respectful. I watched that and I was like, wow, you did that really well. I was sitting there going, oh, come off it, just get over it, But I thought, no, you really explained that so well.
Thank you. It was a video had been needing to make for at least 2 years. So I had a lot of time to distill it all. But I will link it back to one thing, and the reason why I came to that realization, or why that's my standpoint or opinion, is because I look at everything through the lens of permaculture design. And so fill in the blank, and I know I explained it on the video as well, but there's multiple reasons that I came up against where I was like, actually, no, this isn't going to help me with like the long-term success of this site, and also the needs of nourishment, and having to also be adaptable, because sometimes something happens and you have to respond to it.
Yep. Well, yes, it's that's it. It's responding to change, isn't it? And it's, using those creative ways. I've been no dig for a while, but I've actually changed my language to minimal disturbance, because I think, well, no, I do. I have root vegetables, so I suppose if you want to get technical about what is digging, but I am disturbing. I'm disturbing the soil in some way. Every time I'm doing something, there is some sort of disturbance there. So I've just changed the language around. I don't go and till up my garden beds, but there are occasions that I'm going to disturb them, but I keep it to a minimum.
And it links back to what we'd chatted about at the start of this, with like trying to just like breathe a bit and live guilt-free. And I think the exact same thing is there in terms of how you garden. I really want to write a book called like 100 Ways to Grow a Potato, just to show that it's like there was just almost as like a metaphor of like it's not one way or the highway. There's all of these different things that you can do to get this to the same result. And the other thing, and this is the absolute, like my biggest thing, is the fact that you're growing your own food is infinitely better than being reliant on supermarkets or the global food market. So let's just leave it there, get on with life and have fun and drink wine.
And really, like, you do you. Like, why are you so interested in, like, worrying about what somebody else is doing? You do you, and if it works for you, then awesome, and I'll do me. Like,
I can learn something from you, you can learn something from me. We can have a respectful discussion about it, and as you said, you get on with it, and you drink wine, and you have a laugh, and you eat good food. Like, that's life, right?
And exactly, some people, I get it. They really like to be told what to do, and that's fine. I'm just not of that disposition, and I also, for my site to work best, I have multiple different styles of strategies, approaches, techniques, methods that have all intermingled in this weird kind of like patchwork quilt that suit it in its best way, and it's its own probably unique collection and interpretation of all these different ideas and methods, and that's quite fun.
So, if you could only plant one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It's not going to be hazelnuts.
Well, maybe if I planted a few million, I might be lucky, and then. So can I be a little bit cheeky and say, if you say plant, I guess it means I can still sow whatever I want.
Yeah, sure.
Touche. Well played. See, we didn't ask the right question.
Thank you. No, if I was only to plant one thing, no. You see, that's why it's like really important to just take time to kind of like look at what's given in front of you and to like try and think outside the box. It's like that's like permaculture in a nutshell. But I will like, if it was only one plant I could plant, so whatever, for the rest of my life, it would be nothing, because I'd rather not grow anything than only be allowed to grow one thing. I would just let other people do it, and I'd find a different hobby. I might take up fishing or something.
Down with monoculture.
Yeah.
Make it a shirt.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyone in their right mind could properly answer that question. It's pretty impossible.
I'd pick flowers. I just want to look at flowers all day long, and I just buy my food. That would make me happy.
See, but then would it be one type of flower, or were you just talking flowers in general?
Probably dahlias. Just fields of dahlias.
Well, you can eat the tubers at least.
Yeah, true. You know how tasty they are.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're coming up to almost the hour mark. So would you like to ask the grounding question? Or?
Yeah, so we finish off with the grounding question with all of our guests, and that's if you could give one piece of permaculture advice to someone who's just starting out on their journey, what would that be?
I think people get really caught up on trying to learn all of the 12 principles in one go. And I'm just going to fast forward. What you realize over time is that all of the principles interweave with one another, and it's quite beautiful. But what I'd say, if you're just starting out, pick maybe one, maximum two principles that kind of really stand out to you, that kind of pique your interest, and just focus on exploring that. Because the more you explore, the more you kind of naturally realize how all of the other principles will link into that. So yeah, just pick one or two principles that really do something inside of you, and explore those, and naturally you'll enter a fantastic world.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
That's great advice. And it's funny when you were saying that, I was going back to when I discovered permaculture and I was learning about the principles, and how, there was some there that I was really drawn to. And there was a couple there that I was almost like, oh, I don't understand that. So that's too foreign. There's a couple of, I really had to sit with for a while. And even now, there's still sometimes that I'm still, I suppose we're always learning, right? But I'm still looking and learning, and I have those moments when I'm in the garden, I'm like, okay, I can see how this applies and that's connected. And but it took me a little while to, really get a handle on all 12. And it was really interesting observation of that, that push and pull.
Yeah. It's it's fun, and it's also a journey. I think people also forget it's just a skill, and like with everything, it just takes time. It's like you're not going to pick up a guitar and play some amazing love song in one go, are you? It takes a while, and it's fun. It's about, for me, and it's a thing that I feel about self-sufficiency as well. Self-sufficiency is having a direction, not a destination. If you look at people and it's a big thing with Olympians, that their destination is winning the Olympics, is having a gold. And very often gold winners will then fall into deep depression, because what can they do? What can they top off? Because their mindset is finite. But what I propose, or what I live by, is an infinite mindset. And I think that's really important.
I lied. What's our final question is, when are you coming to Australia?
No pressure, but we need an answer.
You know what? So I've been thinking about this. No, I've been thinking about this. I've been looking at things for the last few months, at how I could do a film trip to Australia, and I'd come for a month and visit as many different interesting permaculture sites and gardens, and have a film tour, just to show something completely different to both my temperate climate audience, but I would love to go and learn or see things that's happening there, and to think, how could that be adapted to my climate, or little ideas, and to also just celebrate the joys of something different, like all of the fruits that you guys can grow. And I'd love to just experience that. So yeah, I really have been thinking quite a lot about doing some kind of filming tour. So if you're welcome to help me with who to visit, when to come. I don't know what
there
the
is
best
a list
month.
zooming around already.
And we've got some connections down in South Australia. They've got an amazing down there, Tassie, Vic. There's just so many kind of hotspots for permaculture around Australia, but there's some amazing things in all different kind of climates and microclimates here for sure.
Yep. we can definitely help
Very
you out.
cool.
Thank you for sure.
Excellent. Well, we'll continue our discussion on that then.
Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us. And yeah,
thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate it. It was really good fun, and I love it. You really brought a different perspective to the conversations that we have, and challenge our thinking on a few things as well. So thank you so much.
That's good. It's I love having a conversation, especially in a place where I feel like there's no judgment, and we can just chat openly. And I'm very grateful.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Permaculture podcast. Jump onto our Facebook group to keep the chat going and to look for any resources that we mentioned on today's show. Look in the show notes.
And if you liked the episode today, then subscribe. Please give us a review and share. And if you didn't, then that's okay. We're sure you'll find the right podcast for you.
Bye.
Bye.